The water turned red, not metaphorically, actually red. Jessica's scream pierced the Arizona twilight as the cottonmouth's fangs sank into Tyler's calf, the 12-year-old's face contorting in agony beneath the chlorinated surface. But here's what nobody saw coming. The snake wasn't the real monster in this pool. That revelation would take 3 days, 2 lawsuits, and 1 buried secret to surface. And when it did, it would destroy everything the Meadowbrook HOA thought they knew about the woman they'd been tormenting for 6 months. The first sign something was wrong came at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late June, when Claire Mitchell heard the splash. She was in her home office, fingers flying across the keyboard as she finalized the Henderson contract, a $2.3 million deal that would secure her real estate firm's position as the top agency in Scottsdale. The window was cracked open to let in the dry desert breeze, and that's when she heard it, the unmistakable sound of a body hitting water. Her waters? Claire's fingers froze mid-keystroke. She lived alone. She wasn't expecting anyone, and her pool was gated, locked, and explicitly marked with a private property no trespassing sign she'd installed after moving into the Meadowbrook Estates community 3 months ago. She pushed back from her desk, the leather chair rolling silently across the hardwood floor. Through the second-story window, she had a perfect view of her backyard, 2,500 square feet of meticulously landscaped desert paradise, complete with native succulents, a built-in barbecue, and the crown jewel, a custom saltwater pool with a rock waterfall and integrated hot tub. What she saw made her blood run cold. Children, 4 of them, maybe 5, ranging in age from what looked like 10 to 14. They'd somehow gotten past her locked gate and were now treating her pool like their personal water park. A blonde girl in a pink bikini was doing cannonballs off the diving board. 2 boys were wrestling near the shallow end, their shouts echoing off the stucco walls. Another girl, brunette, older, maybe 13, was filming the whole thing on her phone while sitting on the edge with her feet dangling in the water. And standing guard by the gate, arms crossed like some pint-sized security guard, was a boy who couldn't have been more than 11, wearing swim trunks decorated with cartoon sharks. Claire didn't think, she reacted. She was down the stairs and out the back door in less than 30 seconds, her bare feet slapping against the heated travertine tile surrounding the pool deck. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The kids froze. The blonde girl was mid-jump, suspended in air for a heartbeat before gravity pulled her down with an awkward, panic-stiffened splash. The 2 boys separated immediately, their roughhousing forgotten. The brunette with the phone actually had the audacity to keep filming. "I said," Claire repeated, her voice dropping to that dangerous, quiet register that had made grown men squirm across negotiation tables. "What are you doing in my pool?" The boy by the gate, the one playing lookout, spoke first. He had that entitled confidence that came from never being told no in his entire privileged life. "Relax, lady, we're just swimming, it's not a big deal." "Not a big," Claire physically bit down on her tongue to keep from unleashing the full fury of her vocabulary. She was 34 years old. She'd worked her ass off for 15 years to afford this house, this life, this pool, and these entitled little brats were treating it like a public facility. "Get out now." The blonde girl scrambled for the ladder, water streaming off her pink bikini. "Tyler, we should go." "We don't have to do anything," the lookout boy, Tyler, apparently interrupted. "My mom's the HOA president. She said we could use any pool in the neighborhood as long as nobody's swimming." Claire's jaw actually dropped. "Your mother said what?" "Any pool that's not being used is community property for the summer," the brunette girl chimed in, finally lowering her phone. She had the same sharp features as Tyler, the same entitled tilt to her chin. "Sister, definitely. It's in the HOA bylaws, Section 7, Article 3. We looked it up." This was insane. This was beyond insane. "That," Claire said slowly, enunciating each word like she was explaining quantum physics to a toddler, "is not what that bylaw means. That bylaw refers to the community pool and common areas. This is my private property, my private pool, which you have broken into." "We didn't break anything," Tyler interrupted. "The gate was unlocked." It absolutely was not unlocked. Claire checked that lock every single night. She was obsessive about it, had been ever since the previous week when she'd found a beer bottle floating in her pool and blamed it on wind. Now she realized it hadn't been wind at all. "How long has this been going on?" she demanded. The kids exchanged glances. It was the younger of the two boys who cracked first, his sunburned face crumpling with guilt. "Maybe 2 weeks," he offered quietly. "Maybe 3. 3 weeks. Only when you're not home," the blonde girl added quickly, like that made it better. "We're always really careful. We clean up after ourselves. You didn't even notice." "I noticed a beer bottle." "That was Brady," Tyler said immediately, pointing at the older of the two boys, a lanky 14-year-old with braces and a guilty expression. "We told him not to bring drinks, but he's an idiot." Brady flushed. "It was one bottle." "Everyone out now, before I call the police." That finally got them moving. The kids scrambled from the pool like it had suddenly turned to acid, grabbing towels and shoes and phones from where they'd scattered them across her furniture. Her expensive, weather-resistant furniture that she'd spent 3 months selecting. But Tyler didn't move. He stood there by the gate, water dripping from his shark-covered swim trunks, and fixed Claire with a look that was pure calculation. "You're making a big mistake," he said quietly. "Excuse me. My mom runs this community. If you mess with us, she'll make your life hell, just saying." He shrugged, palms up, like he was doing her a favor by warning her. "It's easier to just let us swim. We're not hurting anything." Claire took 3 steps forward until she was looming over the boy. He was tall for his age, but she still had 6 inches on him, and she used every bit of that height advantage now. "Let me make something very clear to you, Tyler. I don't care if your mother is the HOA president, the governor of Arizona, or the Queen of England. This is my home, my property, my pool, and if I ever catch you or any of your friends here again without my explicit permission, I will have every single one of you arrested for trespassing. Am I understood?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Tyler's face, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by that same entitled smirk. "Whatever," he muttered. "Your pool's not even that nice anyway." He sauntered toward the gate where his friends were waiting, taking his sweet time like he was doing her a favor by leaving. The brunette's sister, Jessica, Claire heard one of the others call her, paused at the gate. "You're going to regret this," she said simply. Then they were gone, slipping through the gate and disappearing into the network of walking paths that connected the houses in Meadowbrook Estates. Claire stood there in her backyard, dripping wet from where the kids' splashing had soaked her silk blouse, and felt the first cold finger of dread trace down her spine. She'd lived in enough communities, dealt with enough people to recognize a threat when she heard one, and that hadn't been a child's empty boast. That had been a promise. Claire's phone rang at 7:15 a.m. the next morning. She was in the middle of her second cup of coffee, still in her pajamas, reviewing contracts on her laptop at the kitchen island. "Claire Mitchell," she answered automatically, wedging the phone between her shoulder and ear. "Ms. Mitchell, this is Deborah Hartwell. I'm the president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association." Claire's hand froze halfway to the keyboard. "Tyler's mother, of course." "Mrs. Hartwell, what can I do for you?" "I understand there was an incident at your property yesterday evening involving my children and some of their friends." The woman's voice was crisp, professional, and utterly devoid of warmth. Claire recognized the tone. It was the same one she used when preparing to destroy someone in a negotiation. "That's correct," Claire said carefully. "I found several children swimming in my pool without permission, trespassing on my private property." "I see." A pause. "Ms. Mitchell, I feel there may have been some confusion about community protocols. At Meadowbrook Estates, we pride ourselves on being a family-friendly neighborhood where children can play freely and safely. It's part of what makes our community so special." "I understand that. What I don't understand is why your children believed they had permission to use my private pool." "Did they damage anything?" The question threw Claire. "What? Did my children, or any of their friends, damage your property in any way?" "No, but..." "Then I'm not sure I understand what the issue is. They were cooling off on a hot summer day. They weren't hurting anyone. And frankly, Ms. Mitchell, as a member of this community, you have certain obligations to your neighbors. We're not just individual houses, we're a community." Claire set down her coffee cup before she threw it. "Mrs. Hartwell, let me be very clear. I purchased this home and this property. The pool is part of my private residence. Your children do not have permission to use it, ever. Is that understood?" "I see." Another pause, longer this time. When Deborah Hartwell spoke again, her voice had dropped several degrees. You know, Ms. Mitchell, I've reviewed your file with the HOA. You moved in 3 months ago, and in that time you've already accumulated several violations. Claire blinked. Violations? What violations? Your trash cans were visible from the street on 3 separate occasions after the designated pickup time. Your front lawn sprinklers run on days that don't comply with our water conservation schedule. And just last week, you installed a security camera pointing toward the common walkway without HOA approval, a direct violation of Section 12, Article 8 of our community guidelines. Those are minor infractions. Minor or not, they're violations, and they're accumulating on your record. Deborah's voice took on an almost pleasant quality, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. You see, at Meadowbrook Estates, we have standards, we have rules, everyone follows them, and when someone consistently shows disregard for our community guidelines, well, there are consequences. The threat was crystal clear. Claire felt her temperature rising. Are you seriously threatening me because I kicked your kids out of my pool? Threatening? Ms. Mitchell, I'm simply explaining how our community operates. We all have to get along. We all have to make sacrifices. And those who refuse to be team players often find that life here becomes uncomfortable. Your children were trespassing. My children were being children. Perhaps if you had kids of your own, you'd understand that. But since you don't, let me explain. In this community, we look out for each other. We share, we help, and we don't threaten to call the police on 12-year-olds for going swimming. Claire's hand tightened around the phone. This conversation is over. One more thing, Ms. Mitchell. Deborah's voice sharpened. I'd recommend you review the HOA bylaws very carefully, particularly the sections regarding community harmony and neighborly conduct, because right now you're dangerously close to being labeled a hostile resident. And trust me, you don't want that designation. The line went dead. Claire sat in her kitchen, phone still pressed to her ear, and felt the situation crystallize with perfect, terrible clarity. She just declared war, and she didn't even know the battlefield yet. The first salvo came that afternoon. Claire was showing a property in Paradise Valley, a sprawling 6-bedroom estate with mountain views, when her phone buzzed with an email notification. She ignored it, keeping her focus on the clients, a young tech entrepreneur and his wife who were relocating from San Francisco. The seller is motivated, Claire explained as they walked through the master suite. They've already moved to their new property in Sedona, so they're eager to close quickly. I think we could negotiate them down another $50,000 if... Her phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Excuse me for just one moment, she told the clients, stepping into the hallway to check her phone. 7 emails, all from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Claire stared at the screen. Each email came with photos, professional, high-quality photos that had clearly been taken specifically to document these supposed violations. Photos of her trash cans at the end of her driveway at 8:47 a.m. on pickup day. The deadline was 8:30 a.m. Photos of her security camera angled slightly toward the walking path. Photos of her pool filter box, visible from a specific angle near the community mailboxes. Each violation came with a fine, $50, $100, $200 for the security camera. Total damage, $1,150. And at the bottom of each email, the same message. Fines must be paid within 14 days or additional penalties will apply. Repeated violations may result in legal action by the HOA. Ms. Mitchell, the wife poked her head into the hallway. Is everything all right? Claire forced a smile, shoving her phone into her pocket. Everything's fine, just a minor issue. Now let's talk about that pool house. She finished the showing on autopilot, her mind racing. This was retaliation, pure, calculated retaliation. Deborah Hartwell had sent someone, probably multiple someones, to photograph every tiny, technical violation they could find on Claire's property. The message was clear: you don't get to say no to us, not without consequences. That evening, Claire sat in her home office and did what she always did when facing a problem. She researched. The Meadowbrook Estates HOA was a mandatory membership organization that governed the community's 247 homes. Deborah Hartwell had been president for 4 years. The board consisted of 5 members, all of whom had held their positions for at least 2 years. Their monthly meetings were closed to non-board members unless you submitted a written request 2 weeks in advance. The bylaws were 73 pages of dense legal text that seemed designed to give the board maximum authority with minimum accountability. Fines could be levied for dozens of violations, many of which were subject to board interpretation. Appeals had to go through the board itself, meaning Deborah and her friends would be judging whether their own decisions were fair. It was a system designed for abuse, and Claire had just made herself target number one. Her doorbell rang at 8:34 p.m. Claire wasn't expecting anyone. She checked the security camera feed on her phone, the same camera the HOA was fining her for, and saw a woman standing on her porch. Mid-40s, athletic build, wearing yoga pants and a concerned expression. Claire opened the door but kept the security chain engaged. "Can I help you?" "Hi, I'm Karen Chen from 3 houses down." The woman's voice went up at the end like everything was a question. "I heard about what happened with the Hartwell kids yesterday. I just wanted to check in and make sure you're okay." Claire's suspicion must have shown on her face, because Karen immediately held up both hands. I know, showing up unannounced is super weird. But I've been trying to find the right time to talk to you since you moved in, and after what happened yesterday, I figured I couldn't wait anymore." "What do you mean?" Karen glanced over her shoulder, actually checking to see if anyone was watching, then leaned in closer. "Can I come in, just for 5 minutes, please? You're not crazy and you're not wrong, and you need to know what you're up against." Something in the woman's tone, genuine fear, made Claire's decision for her. She undid the chain and stepped aside. Karen practically scurried inside, and Claire noticed she was clutching a folder against her chest like it contained state secrets. "Okay," Karen said once they were in the living room with the curtains drawn. "I'm going to talk fast because I can't stay long. Deborah Hartwell is a nightmare, an actual legitimate nightmare. She's been running this HOA like her personal fiefdom for 4 years, and she's destroyed at least 3 families that I know of." "Destroyed." "Forced them to sell and move." Karen opened the folder, spreading documents across Claire's coffee table. "The Martinez family, 2 years ago, they refused to remove a kid's playset that was 6 inches taller than the approved height for backyard structures. Deborah hit them with fines until they accumulated over $15,000 in violations. They had to sell at a loss just to pay the HOA debt." Claire felt sick. That's insane. "The Johnsons last year. Their teenager had friends who skateboarded on the community basketball court after 8 p.m., which technically violated the quiet hours rule. Deborah had the board vote to revoke the family's access to all community amenities. All of them. Pool, gym, clubhouse, everything. When they fought back, she filed a lawsuit for creating a hostile community environment." "Did she win?" "She settled. The Johnsons moved to Chandler." Karen pulled out another document. "And the Patels, 6 months ago. They complained when Deborah's son Tyler and his friends kept cutting through their backyard as a shortcut to the community pool. Guess what happened?" Claire didn't need to guess. Fines. Hundreds of them for everything. Dead flowers in their front yard planter. Christmas lights still up 3 days after New Year's, paint on their mailbox being not quite the approved shade of gray. The Patels tried to fight. They went to the meetings, filed complaints, tried to get other homeowners involved. But Deborah controls the board completely. She handpicks who gets elected. And she's made it very clear you're either with her or you're against her. And against her is a very expensive place to be. Claire sank onto her couch, the implications crashing over her like a wave. "So what you're telling me is I'm screwed." "I'm telling you that you need to be very, very careful." Karen gathered up her documents. "I like you, Claire. You seem like a good person, but Deborah Hartwell is relentless, and her kids, they're mini versions of her. Tyler's been suspended from school twice for bullying. Jessica, his sister, runs a whole campaign of social media harassment against kids she doesn't like, and Deborah protects them. Always, she thinks they're perfect. Why hasn't anyone stood up to her? Because most people here aren't strong enough to fight. They have kids in the local schools, jobs in the area, roots in the community. They can't just pack up and leave, so they keep their heads down, they follow Deborah's rules, and they pretend everything's fine." Karen moved toward the door. "But you're new, you're single, you don't have kids, which means you're vulnerable in different ways. Deborah's going to isolate you. She's going to make sure nobody helps you. And she's going to fine you into either submission or bankruptcy. There has to be something I can do." Karen paused at the door, her expression a mix of pity and regret. "There is. You can apologize to Tyler and Jessica. You can let them use your pool whenever they want. You can bend the knee and hope Deborah decides to be merciful. And if I don't, then you better be prepared for war, because Deborah Hartwell doesn't lose, ever. Karen slipped out into the night, leaving Claire alone with the terrible knowledge of what she'd stumbled into. She walked through her beautiful home, the home she'd worked 15 years to afford, the home she'd dreamed about owning since she was a struggling 22-year-old making cold calls from a shared desk in a cramped office. She'd sacrificed relationships, weekends, holidays, all in pursuit of this moment, this achievement. And now some petty tyrant and her entitled children were trying to take it from her. Claire made her decision standing in her backyard, looking at the pool that sparkled under the Arizona stars. She'd spent her entire adult life fighting for what was hers. She'd negotiated with billionaires, outmaneuvered corporate sharks, and built a business from nothing. She wasn't about to let a suburban dictator break her. If Deborah Hartwell wanted war, then war she would get. The next 3 days were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Claire woke Wednesday morning to find her car, a pristine Mercedes C-Class she'd purchased just 6 months ago, covered in soapy handprints. Small handprints, child-sized. Nothing was damaged, nothing was broken. Just dozens of handprints in what looked like dish soap dried into cloudy patterns across her black paint. She checked her security cameras. The footage from 3 a.m. showed 3 figures in hoodies approaching her driveway. They'd been careful to avoid showing their faces, but Claire recognized the body language, the height. Tyler, Jessica, and one of their friends. She saved the footage. Then she called the non-emergency police line. Officer Rodriguez arrived 45 minutes later, a tired-looking cop in his mid-40s who'd clearly handled about 1,000 of these petty neighborhood disputes. "You want to file a vandalism report?" he asked, examining the handprints. "I want it documented that this happened." "Any idea who did it?" Claire showed him the footage. Rodriguez watched it with the expression of a man who knew exactly where this was going and wanted no part of it. "I can write up a report," he said slowly, "but unless you've got clear identification of the suspects, it's just going to sit in a file. No damage means no crime worth prosecuting. It's just kids being stupid. These kids are terrorizing me. Ma'am, I understand you're frustrated, but this is a civil issue. Neighborhood dispute. Maybe try talking to the parents." "I did, that's why this is happening." Rodriguez sighed, pulling out his notepad. "Okay, I'll document it, but my advice? Get cameras that cover every angle of your property, and maybe consider moving. I've responded to a dozen calls from this neighborhood in the past year. Same story every time. Someone pisses off the HOA president, suddenly their life becomes hell, and there's nothing we can do about it because it's all technically legal harassment." He left 20 minutes later with a half-hearted report that Claire knew would accomplish nothing. That afternoon, she got an email from the HOA. Another violation. Failure to maintain vehicle appearance standards. Vehicles parked in driveways must be clean and presentable at all times. Fine $200. The irony wasn't lost on Claire. She'd been fined for having a dirty car, a car that had been vandalized by the HOA president's own children. Thursday brought a new escalation. Claire came home from a property showing to find a dead rattlesnake on her doorstep. It had been killed recently, the blood was still fresh, and positioned deliberately across her welcome mat. She didn't touch it, she didn't move it. She called the police again. This time it was Officer Rodriguez's partner, a younger cop named Williams who actually seemed concerned. "That's a Mojave rattlesnake," Williams said, photographing the snake from multiple angles. "Extremely venomous, you don't mess with these." "Someone clearly did. Any chance it just crawled here and died?" Claire gave him a look. "Yeah, okay, stupid question. Someone killed it and left it here. Message sent." Williams glanced at his notes. "Rodriguez told me about your situation with the HOA. This is escalating fast, ma'am. Have you considered getting a restraining order?" "Against who? I can't prove who's doing this." "Do you really need proof?" It was the first time a cop had actually acknowledged what was happening. Claire felt a surge of gratitude. "What can I actually do?" Williams was quiet for a moment, watching animal control load the dead snake into a container. "Honestly, same advice Rodriguez gave you. Document everything, cameras everywhere, and be prepared for this to get worse before it gets better. People like this, people who use power as a weapon, they don't stop until they're forced to stop, or until their victim gives up. I'm not giving up. Then you better lawyer up, because this isn't going to end with dead snakes. He was right. Friday morning, Claire discovered that someone had filed a complaint with her real estate brokerage. The email from her managing broker, Susan, was terse. Need to speak with you ASAP. Client complaint, call me. Claire called from her car, parked outside a coffee shop, dreading what was coming. What the hell did you do? Susan demanded without preamble. I just got off the phone with a potential client who says you were unprofessional, pushy, and made inappropriate comments during a showing. What went? Tuesday, the Wilsons. Said you spent half the showing on your phone dealing with personal drama, barely answered their questions, and then pressured them to make an offer they weren't ready for. Claire's mind raced. The Wilsons, the tech couple from San Francisco, the showing that had been interrupted by all those HOA violation emails. Susan, that's not what happened. I had an emergency. I don't care what happened. The Wilsons are working with another agent now, and they're considering filing a formal complaint with the state licensing board. That's insane. I gave them a great showing. We were about to enter negotiations. Were you on your phone during the showing? Briefly, yes, but... Did you seem distracted? Maybe slightly, but I still... Then you gave them ammunition, Claire, and now I have to do damage control. Susan's voice softened slightly. Look, I've known you for 5 years, you're one of my best agents, but something's going on with you lately. The last 3 weeks you've been off your game, canceling appointments, showing up late, missing calls. What's happening? Claire wanted to scream. She wanted to explain everything, the entitled kids, the tyrannical HOA president, the harassment and vandalism and dead snakes. But she knew how it would sound, petty, dramatic, like she couldn't handle basic neighborhood politics. Just some issues with my HOA, she said carefully. Nothing I can't handle. Handle it faster, because I can't have agents who bring drama to client interactions. The Wilsons aren't the first ones to mention you seem distracted lately. Get your head in the game, or I'll have to start diverting your leads to other agents. The line went dead. Claire sat in her car and did the math. If Susan started reassigning her clients, her income would take a massive hit. Most of her business came from the brokerage's lead system. Lose that, and she'd be back to cold calling and door knocking like a rookie. Deborah Hartwell wasn't just attacking her at home anymore. She was attacking her livelihood. The Wilson complaint had Deborah's fingerprints all over it. Either she knew the Wilsons somehow, or she'd found out about the showing and reached out to them afterward. Either way, the message was clear. We can hurt you anywhere, not just at home. Claire drove home in a daze and found one more surprise waiting for her. A letter taped to her door, not an email this time, an actual physical letter on HOA letterhead. Notice of emergency board hearing. Dear Ms. Mitchell, due to multiple violations of community standards and reports of hostile behavior toward other residents, an emergency board hearing has been scheduled to determine whether you are in violation of the Meadowbrook Estates Good Neighbor policy. Failure to demonstrate community cooperation may result in additional fines, restriction of property rights, or legal action to enforce HOA covenant compliance. Your presence is required at this hearing on Monday, June 28th at 7:00 p.m. in the Community Center. Board President Deborah Hartwell. Monday was 4 days away. Claire stood on her porch, letter in hand, and felt the trap closing around her. They were going to put her on trial, publicly, in front of the board that Deborah controlled. They were going to find her guilty of being a bad neighbor, and then they were going to fine her into oblivion. Unless she could find a way to fight back. Claire spent the weekend in her office building her case. She printed every violation notice. She compiled the security footage of the kids trespassing in her pool, the vandalism of her car, the dead snake. She researched HOA law, diving into Arizona statutes that governed homeowners associations. And she found something interesting. According to Arizona Revised Statute 331808, HOAs were required to follow specific procedures for violations and fines. The violations had to be legitimate. The fines had to be proportional. And homeowners had the right to a fair hearing before an impartial board. Impartial being the key word. Deborah Hartwell was the one who'd issued the violations. She was the one whose children had been trespassing, and she was the one who would be presiding over the hearing. That wasn't impartial, that was a kangaroo court. Claire also discovered that several of the violations she'd been cited for didn't actually exist in the HOA bylaws. The improper window covering color rule, nowhere in the official documents. The vehicle appearance standard, also fiction. Deborah had made them up, just manufactured rules to justify the fines. That was fraud and possibly illegal. Claire printed everything. She highlighted the relevant statutes. She prepared a presentation that would systematically dismantle every accusation. She was ready for war. What she wasn't ready for was Saturday evening, when her doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. Claire checked the camera. Two women stood on her porch. One was Karen Chen. The other was someone Claire didn't recognize, Hispanic, mid-30s, holding a casserole dish like she was making a social call. Claire opened the door. "I'm sorry to bother you so late," Karen said quickly, "but this is Maria Santos. She lives 2 streets over and she needs to talk to you, right now." Maria stepped forward, her eyes darting nervously toward the street. "Can we come in, please? They can't see me here." Claire stood aside and the women entered. Maria set the casserole on the kitchen counter, apparently the disguise for why she was visiting, and turned to Claire with an expression of barely controlled panic. "I heard about the hearing on Monday," Maria said, "and I heard what you're planning to do." "How did you?" "Karen told me. She said you're going to fight back, that you're going to bring evidence and challenge Deborah." Maria grabbed Claire's hands. "You can't, please, you have to understand. If you fight her like that, she'll destroy you." "She's already destroying me." "No, she's testing you, pushing you. But if you actually stand up in that hearing and challenge her authority publicly in front of the other board members, she will make it her life's mission to obliterate you. I've seen it happen." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Maria and Karen exchanged glances. Karen nodded slightly. "We have a plan," Maria said quietly, "but you're not going to like it." The casserole sat cooling on the counter, a perfect domestic prop, while Maria Santos laid out a plan that would either save Claire's life in Meadowbrook Estates or damn her completely. Outside, the Arizona night pressed against the windows, and somewhere in the darkness, a woman who ruled through fear and her entitled children were plotting their next move. Claire had 4 days to decide: fight the system head-on and risk total destruction, or play a longer game that required her to do the one thing she'd sworn never to do: bend the knee and pretend to submit while preparing for a war that would be fought in shadows instead of spotlights. The choice should have been simple. But as Maria began explaining exactly what they'd discovered about Deborah Hartwell's finances and her real reason for terrorizing certain homeowners, Claire realized nothing about this situation had ever been simple at all. 3 years ago," Maria said, settling onto Claire's couch like she was about to tell a ghost story, "I found out Deborah's been embezzling from the HOA." Claire's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "What?" Karen closed all the curtains before joining them, moving with practiced efficiency. These women had done this before, had clandestine meetings, shared dangerous information in whispered voices. This was a resistance movement, Claire realized, a quiet rebellion against a suburban tyrant. "She's not just doing it for the money," Maria continued. "I mean, yes, she's stealing probably $30,000 or $40,000 a year from the community fund, but that's not the main issue. The main issue is that she's using HOA money to pay off personal debts, finance her kids' private activities, and maintain her lifestyle.